passengers in the aisle, holding down not an unruly passenger, but the captain of the plane.
Watch as this Delta pilot, accused of being intoxicated, makes it through initial security as he's getting ready to fly from Minneapolis to San Diego.
Hey, I found myself in a bit of a predicament. I'm in the air right now.
Did you just take off?
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to be on that aircraft?
No.
What is up, guys? Thank you very much for joining me. You're very welcome to the fourth installment of Airline Agitators, where in this video we're going to be taking a look at some rogue pilots. I just want to preface this video by saying that airline travel is still one of the safest methods of travel available. There are so many systems and safety procedures in place and redundancies to those systems and safety procedures to ensure that all measures are taken to prevent an accident. And if the unfortunate does happen and there is an accident or an incident, the authorities and the powers that be thoroughly investigate to see if there's ways that they can prevent that from happening again. So I'm not trying to put anybody off flying, and I'm not having a bash at pilots either. As we said before on the channel, with every profession you're going to get your bad apples, and aviation is no different. And keep in mind, the majority of pilots out there are highly competent, highly skilled people that are completely focused on delivering a safe flight to the passengers. And let's not forget the rest of the flight crew and the ground staff who all play their part in order to get the flight off the ground and to its destination. So now, with all that being said, let's jump right into the video. Enjoy. Vehicle theft has become so commonplace these days that in the United States, one vehicle is stolen about every 45 seconds on average. Luckily, the theft of aircraft is far less common. But when you do hear that an aircraft has been stolen, it tends to give you the chills, as the stakes can be quite high and the consequences devastating. Even more so when the person at the controls doesn't even have a pilot's license. But that's exactly what happened on August the 10th, 2018 at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in Seattle, Washington. A 29-year-old Horizon Air ground service agent by the name of Richard Russell hijacked the Bombardier Q400 aircraft. The aircraft was owned by Horizon Air but was operating for Alaska Airlines with the registration number November 449 Quebec X-ray. It was delivered new to Horizon Air in 2012. On the afternoon of the incident, that aircraft arrived into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport at about 13:35 local time after an in-service flight from Victoria, British Columbia. It was not scheduled to fly again that day. Russell commandeered an airport tug and made his way the half a mile or so towards where the aircraft was parked. Russell gained access to the plane at Plane Cargo 1 at the north end of Seattle-Tacoma Airport. He then proceeded to move it to runway 16 centre via the taxiways. Seattle Tower tried several times to get the pilot of the aircraft to identify himself on frequency but received no response.
Aircraft on Charlie, lining up runway 16 center, say your call sign. The Dash 8 on runway 16 center, say your call sign. The Dash 8 on runway 16 center, say your call sign. Who's the Dash 8 holding on runway 16 center?
A nearby Alaska Airlines jet on the ground reported that the aircraft began a takeoff roll with its wheels smoking, and an unauthorised takeoff was made at 19:32 local time.
Italian Alaska 322. That aircraft was passing behind the horizon when he was taking off roll, and I don't know what he was doing.
Who's the aircraft on runway 16 center?
Wheels are smoking left and right as they are right now as he's rolling down the runway.
Alright, I'm not even talking to him.
He came flying out of the cargo area in front of Delta.
Which cargo area, 1 or 2?
The one that's furthest to the north.
Came out of cargo area 1. There's just a single pilot.
In response to the unauthorised takeoff, two McDonnell Douglas F-15C Eagles of the Oregon Air National Guard's 142nd Fighter Wing under the command of NORAD were scrambled at around 20:15 local time. Both were armed and went supersonic on their way to intercept. Also, a KC-135R Stratotanker refueling tanker was also scrambled from Fairchild Air Force Base to support the F-15 flight. Flights in and out of SeaTac Airport were temporarily suspended. When Air Traffic Control eventually established communications with the aircraft, Russell explained exactly what was going on. Let's have a little listen to that exchange here now.
Who is transmitting on ramp?
Sorry, Horizon guy 449 Quebec X-ray.
Yeah, 449. What can I do for you?
Hey, I found myself in a bit of a predicament. I'm in the air right now and just kind of soaring around.
449, are you not supposed to be on that aircraft?
Yeah, so what's a good frequency to talk to the people?
Did you just take off?
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to be on that aircraft?
No. Hey, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. What's going on? Are you flying the plane?
Yeah, hey, what's the range on this channel?
I'm not sure. What's going on, 449 Quebec X-Ray?
I did a kind of a bad thing, kind of a selfish thing, but it's all good. I'm going to go check out Rainier.
Okay, 449, just verify, are you flying the plane?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, 449, so you hijacked the plane is what you're saying?
Yeah.
449, say again?
Yeah, I'm afraid I did. I don't want to take up this channel. What's another good one to talk to?
The air traffic controller maintained contact with Russell, and I just want to take note of how cool and calm he is, and that's a testament to the training that the air traffic controllers undergo. The controller suggested Russell land at Joint Air Force Base Lewis McChord, but he refused, saying that those guys will rough me up if I try to land there, and I think I might mess something up there too, and I wouldn't want to do that. He also asked ATC did it think that Alaska Airlines would give him a job as a pilot if he successfully landed the plane, to which the controller replied, they'll give you a job doing anything if you can pull this off. Russell spoke of wanting to do a couple of manoeuvres in the aircraft to see what it could do, and requested the coordinates of an orca whale that had been brought to national attention, saying, I want to go see that guy. He also talked about doing a flyby of some mountains like the Olympics and Mount Rainier. Russell went on to explain that his intention wasn't to hurt anybody and that he was just a broken guy that has a few screws loose that he never really knew until now. He apologised to his family, saying there was a lot of people down on the ground that loved and cared about him. Towards the end of the flight, the aircraft was seen performing a barrel roll over the Puget Sound, recovering a mere 10 feet or 3 metres over the water. A veteran airline pilot said the manoeuvre seemed pretty well executed without either stalling or pulling the wings off, saying he can't explain how Russell managed to do it. When the air traffic controller then requested he land the plane after this manoeuvre, he said, I don't know, I don't want to, I was kind of hoping that was going to be it, adding that he hadn't really been planning on landing it. The two F-15s attempted to direct the aircraft towards the Pacific Ocean and did not fire at it. The Q-400 ultimately crashed at 20:43 local time on Ketron Island in the Puget Sound, Pierce County, Washington, killing the occupant Russell and destroying the aircraft. A towboat crew was the first to respond. Firefighters from West Pierce Fire and Rescue and other nearby departments had their arrival hampered by the fact that they had to take a ferry to get to the island and arrived about an hour and a half after the crash, where they then contended with the island's thick brush. The fire burned a 2-acre or 8-hectare area but was extinguished by the following morning. No injuries were reported to residents of the sparsely populated island, despite the crash being in close proximity to at least one cabin which was occupied at the time of the accident. In the days after the crash, cleanup crews and recovery crews contracted by Alaska Airlines and their insurers were present on the island to remove debris. And pieces of aircraft wreckage were still being located on the island after the first anniversary of the incident. Residents of the island bore some cost for the cleaning up, and negotiations were initiated for their reimbursement by Alaska Airlines insurers. The aircraft was worth $30 million, all of which was paid out under the company's insurance policy with no deductibles. Rolling Stone investigated the incident and reported in 2021 that some of Russell's friends and family believed he may have suffered brain injuries during his football years in high school and college. A football teammate of Russell suggested that his mental instability may have been caused by undiagnosed conditions that may have come from repeated concussions. When you look into Russell's background, he doesn't seem like a bad guy whatsoever. It just seems totally out of character for him to do something like this. He had been part of the tow team which repositions aircraft on the airport apron for about 4 years, and an operational supervisor for Horizon Air described Russell as a quiet guy who was well liked by the other workers. During communications with air traffic control, Russell made a complaint about wages, stating minimum wage, we'll chalk it up to that. Maybe that will grease some gears a little bit with the higher ups. So maybe he was a guy that was just fed up with how life was going and the way he was being treated at work. Maybe he felt undervalued. He married his wife in 2012 and together they started a bakery in North Bend, Oregon. They sold the bakery in 2015 so his wife could be closer to her family, and they settled in Summer, Washington, and Russell found employment with Horizon Air. He was an avid traveller and attended Washington State University Global Campus, majoring in social science. He had planned to seek a management position at Horizon Air or become a military officer after receiving his degree. He was active in his church and a leader in the local Christian youth ministry, Young Life. Horizon Air CEO Gary Beck stated that as far as the company knew, Russell did not have a pilot's licence, and Beck said that the aerial manoeuvres were incredible and that he did not know how Russell achieved the things that he did. During his conversation with Air Traffic Control, Russell said that he knew what he was doing a little bit because he had experience in playing video games. After the incident, a pilot for SkyWest Airlines relayed to an emergency dispatcher that in 2017 he saw Russell and another man pointing and flipping switches in the cockpit of a SkyWest aircraft parked at Seattle Tacoma Airport. He stated that the men told him they were training to use the aircraft's auxiliary power unit so they could tow it, but said that it was very suspicious that they left when he confronted them. He also recalled that Russell had been in the cockpit of an Embraer 175 with him, and that Russell had asked him about his flows, which is the pre-flight preparation I do for takeoff. Russell's family released a statement in August of that year stating that they were stunned and heartbroken and devastated by the events. Although the outcome of this incident could have been much more tragic with the loss of many lives on the ground, Richard Russell wasn't a bad man, as he didn't intend to set out to hurt anyone that day. If I was to surmise and give my opinion based on what we've learned about Richard Russell, it would seem that perhaps he was going through some stress in his life. As we've heard, he may have had undiagnosed medical conditions from back in his younger days. Couple this with his job, which gave him easy access to aircraft, and also his love of flight and travel. It seems he may have had a breakdown of the mind, and all these circumstances culminated together to lead to the event that we've seen here. A truly tragic incident here for his friends, family and colleagues. Next up, we're going to take a look at a couple of clips that I've come across. I'm not sure that we should classify all the clips in this segment as rogue pilots. I think there's some rogue equipment, and in this case, a rogue bird. I'm not 100% sure what type of aircraft are in here, but I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't like to be in this yoke doing a crash landing. One good thing this pilot has going for him is the fact that he has plenty of options open to him. Plenty of wide open fields and no power lines. He's also remaining super calm.
Hold on. Hold on! You alright?
Huh?
Are you alright?
Yeah.
I think we hit a bird.
I think they were very fortunate here in regards to where they were when they got into trouble. To be honest, when I first seen this from the air, the field looked like it was just full of grass. But those plants seemed to make for a good landing pad, although I'd say the farmer wasn't very impressed. I can also imagine how much of a pain to recover the aircraft it must have been also. Moving on to our next clip now, and I'm not quite sure what the issue is here. It seems like we still have engine power, so perhaps a flight control issue. But whatever the issue is, you can tell that the pilot's very nervous. But as you can see, there are some options for a landing opening up ahead for him. A surprisingly soft landing there considering the circumstances. I was expecting a much harder impact with the ground. Again, in this situation, luckily for him, he had some open space in which to put the aircraft down. This landing here could best be described as a kangaroo landing. It's one of those moments where the pilot's finished flying and wants to land, but the aircraft hasn't had enough yet. Fortunately for this owner and his wallet, he seems to have landed on some grass, and the only thing he impacts is this bush up ahead. You can almost hear his bank account breathing a sigh of relief. I thought this landing here was going to turn into another bounce fest like the last one. Everything seems to be going well, but I think we've been lulled into a false sense of security here. Oh dear. I really did think we were going to have a rollover here, but as pilots say, keep the blue side up. I'm not sure about you guys, but I think standards at this airfield have took a nosedive recently. The lack of laughter there only validates my observations. And last but not least, we have exclusive footage of Ryanair's new from departure to deck chair service. This new service is aimed at cutting out the middlemen such as coach drivers and taxi drivers and getting you directly to the beach so you can sunbathe without any hesitation. But they are promising that you'll be able to hold on to your breakfast or your gourmet in-flight meal of peanuts and Diet Coke. We're heading on up to Minnesota now, to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, where a pilot attempted to board his flight after consuming some alcohol. The captain made it through initial security checks, but when he seen that they had a secondary check set up, he decided to take a quick detour. But luckily, thanks to some clued-in security staff and CCTV in the airport, they managed to find out what the captain was up to and apprehend him before he took the flight. Let's take a look at some of the footage.
Watch as this Delta pilot, accused of being intoxicated, makes it through initial security as he's getting ready to fly from Minneapolis to San Diego. But when Gabriel Schroeder gets close to his gate, a random secondary check is set up. As he sees what's happening, police say his demeanor changes. When asked to put his bag on the table, he tells police, "I'm not ready," and turns and walks away. Suspicious, officers ask that the pilot be tracked through the airport, and these surveillance cameras show the 37-year-old finding an escalator, heading down a floor to a men's bathroom in late July. He's in that bathroom for only 30 seconds, where police say they later found a bottle of vodka stuffed in one of the trash cans. Schroeder then heads back to the checkpoint, telling an officer he had to go back to the pilot's lounge to get his iPad. Schroeder passes and gets on the jetliner into the first officer's seat, but police officers board and ask the pilot to leave the cockpit.
Thankfully, this guy was stopped before he got onto the plane and potentially caused some harm to people. You can nearly be certain that in his mind he probably thought he was okay to fly the plane, but there's absolutely no place whatsoever for alcohol in the cockpit of an aircraft. The fact that he was attempting to take that bottle of vodka onto the aircraft with him is a bit disturbing, because I'm wondering, was he actually going to drink from it while in flight? I'm sure once they reached their cruising altitude it'd be fairly easy for him to nip off to the toilet once or twice to get a few swigs out of it. If things have gotten so bad to the stage that you're having to take alcohol to work to consume it on the job, then I'm sorry, but you do have an alcohol problem and you need to deal with that. Especially if you're in a position like this guy where people's lives are at stake. You really would expect more from someone in his position. It's just absolutely shocking.
Authorities say when they tested the pilot's blood alcohol level 2.5 hours later, it was under the limit. But authorities say when he was in the cockpit, he was likely over the limit for pilots. The 37-year-old pilot initially denied discarding the vodka and said he had 3 drinks and a beer the night before.
Personally, if I was a pilot myself, I'd leave the drinking until days that I was off work. I wouldn't be drinking the night before I had a flight the next morning. According to the latest statistics available, a pilot gets arrested at least once a month in the United States, but it doesn't specify what those arrests are actually for. But I wouldn't imagine that they're all for being intoxicated. It's a pretty stupid endeavour for the ones who do drink and fly, as becoming a pilot costs an awful lot of money. There's so many people out there that would love to become a pilot but they can't, and then when someone gets into that position and just throws it all away for the sake of a drink, it just doesn't make any sense.
Schroeder faces 2 charges. Some pilots do jail time, like these 2 United pilots busted in Scotland. Others, did you put 270 passengers at risk?
No comment.
Like this JetBlue pilot, gave up his pilot's license and never went to trial.
It kind of bugs me that they let that guy just hand over his pilot's license and walk away without any conviction. That guy's name is Dennis Murphy, and he had already piloted 2 flights between Orlando and JFK International Airport, New York that day when he was selected for a random alcohol test. According to the Brett alcohol technician, Murphy's face was red and he was chewing gum rapidly on his way to the testing office. After allegedly blowing a 0.111 and a 0.091, he asserted the results must have been caused by the gum. Somehow I'm not buying that. He had only been hired 3 months prior by JetBlue and also questioned why he was being tested so soon after his start date. His co-pilot later told agents he'd observed Murphy drinking an unknown beverage from a cup before and during both flights, which carried a combined 270 passengers. The maximum penalty he could have faced if convicted was 15 years in prison. But the one positive is he won't be getting behind the controls of an aircraft again. And in regards to the 2 United pilots that were arrested in Scotland, that happened in 2017 in Glasgow. They were both arrested for breaching drink-fly limits. First Officer Paul Grabenk was sentenced to 10 months in prison, while his colleague Carlos Roberto Lincona was jailed for 15 months. Both had been arrested while preparing to take off from Glasgow Airport. So a few guys there that thought they knew better and thought they'd get away with it. It's never worth throwing away your whole career for the sake of a drink. Next up, we're going to take a look at a captain who had what's described as a deranged meltdown while in mid-flight. But thankfully, due to some quick thinking by the first officer, he managed to lock the captain out of the cockpit while some heroic passengers pinned him down to the ground. I wonder how it must have felt for the passengers when the captain started kicking off like that. It's one thing with an unruly passenger kicking off, but not one of the people that's supposed to be responsible for flying the aircraft. But luckily, due to the fortitude of the flight crew and the passengers, a disaster was quite possibly averted here.
3 hours into a trip from New York to Las Vegas, passengers in the aisle, holding down not an unruly passenger, but the captain of the plane. In the cockpit, his co-pilot radioing an emergency, asking for an unscheduled immediate landing in Amarillo, Texas.
Amarillo, JetBlue 191, emergency.
Ron, can you give me a more specific nature of this medical emergency so I can pass it on to the ambulance crew?
Sources tell ABC News the captain, identified as Clayton Osborne of Georgia, was not at the controls, but began acting erratically, flipping switches in the cockpit and appearing confused. His co-pilot tricked him into going to the passenger compartment to check something out, and then locked the door, changing the security code behind him.
The one that should have all the credit is the co-pilot that was there. He changed the code on the door. He didn't let him back in.
A third JetBlue pilot, off duty and riding as a passenger, slipped into the cockpit to help with the controls. The captain, pacing the aisles now, eventually pounding on the cockpit door, trying to return to the flight deck, starting a panic among passengers.
Started banging on the door, kicking on the door, trying to get inside the cockpit. Before that, he actually started yelling, it's gonna blow up.
A flight attendant screamed for help, and as many as 5 passengers helped tackle the now shouting captain. Some saw him foaming at the mouth while yelling about Al-Qaeda, a bomb, and threatening the plane is going down.
He started to curse at me and, trying to tell me, hey, you better pray, Iraq and Iran. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to show you what Iraq and Iran is. And I took him on a chokehold.
Dave Gonzalez, a former corrections officer from New York, brought him down with a chokehold.
I wasn't letting go of this guy until we landed the plane. I was still on top of this guy until we landed the plane.
Gonzalez and his fellow passengers held him down, first using plastic handcuffs, but he broke free of those, so passengers used their leather belts to tie his arms, all in plain view of cell phone camera rolling passengers.
We don't need pictures of this, please.
Upon landing, police boarded, talked to the co-pilot, and loaded the handcuffed captain onto a wheelchair and into an ambulance.
The captain there, whose name is Clayton Osborne, was charged with interference with a flight crew. But when it came to trial, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was ordered to be held pending a further investigation and was then immediately transferred to a mental health facility in Fort Worth, Texas for additional treatment. After he was evaluated at a federal mental health facility in North Carolina, a district judge freed him under the provisions that he continue mental health treatment, follow a prescribed medication regime, and meet a variety of other conditions. He was also to be monitored by his probation officer for an undetermined period of time. In 2015, he filed a suit against JetBlue for $14.9 million, claiming that the airline did not ensure that he was fit to fly and endangered the lives of the crew and the passengers. This lawsuit was filed only 3 days after the Germanwings flight crash, in which the co-pilot deliberately crashed the plane, killing all on board. The suit was settled the following month, but the terms of the settlement were not disclosed to the public. The cause of the captain's mental breakdown remains unknown. Possibilities suggested include the onset of a psychotic disorder, a neurological event that compromised his brain function, or intoxication due to medication. In the lawsuit filed against JetBlue, Osborne claimed the incident was caused by a complex partial brain seizure. We probably will never know what actually did happen to the captain, but thanks to the quick thinking of the co-pilot there, a disaster was averted. My apologies to everyone for the recent hiatus here on the channel, especially the channel members. I've just been very busy the last couple of weeks, but I've still been working on stuff behind the scenes on the channel, so there is some stuff coming. I'm currently working on the latest Frauder compilation, and also I'll have another channel members video coming as well. There's also a major update coming in relation to our wolf adoption. In that video, I'm going to be bringing everybody up to date from when we started the wolf adoption all the way up until this point. A lot of people had been asking for a long time for updates, and I had been working on a video, but I never got around to finishing it. And I'll go into more detail on why that was in the update video. And hopefully going forward from then, we're going to have more regular updates on what's happening with the wolves. The stuff I had planned for the channel's second birthday will still be going ahead, albeit a bit belated. And there's also a new sovereign citizen racing series in the pipeline as well. And for any of you guys who follow my blog over on Coffee, there's going to be new stuff coming on that very soon too, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Well guys, that just about wraps things up for this episode of Airline Agitators. I hope you did enjoy it, and thanks once again for joining me. A massive shout out to anyone who's watching this with me on the premiere. Thank you very much for joining me. And if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to drop us a like, as it does really help the channel out and I do really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video here on Degenerate Watch. If you'd like to help support the channel, don't forget to check out the links down below in the description, and why not consider becoming a channel member, as that's a great way to help support the channel, plus you get a little bit extra as well. You can find out more about channel memberships by hitting the join button down below this video or checking out the link down below in the description. I'll be back very soon with another video. I hope you'll join me then, and if you haven't checked out some of our other videos, why not check out some of the videos that should be appearing on screen now. Until next time guys, stay safe, take care, peace.